snows upon a winter night was born the child, the Christmas rose, the King of love and light. The angels sang, the shepherds sang, a grateful world rejoiced. And at the blessed birth the stars their exultation voiced. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Christ the Lord. Again the heart with rapture glows to greet the holy night that gave the world its Christmas rose, its King of love and light. Let every voice acclaim his name, a grateful chorus swell. From paradise to earth he came, that we with him might dwell. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Christ the Lord. Oh, come, let us adore him. Adore him, Christ the Lord. Oh, come. Oh, come. Oh, come, let us adore him. Let us Christ the Lord.
Thank you so much, Tia Wortham, Jesu Bambino. And thank you, Richard, the trio, for Follow the Star. Great and glorious morning, everyone. I am Reverend Cheryl McCullough, and welcome, and thank you for sharing your love and light with us today by worshiping with us this morning. Now this week, take time to join us and make that connection that will keep your spirits high. Again, we have our Wednesday morning prayer at 7:30. Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m., we have Divine Connections with Reverend Sylvia. And guess what? This week already, Christmas. And our Christmas Eve candlelighting service is Thursday, December 24th at 7 p.m. And of course, we're ending the year with our New Year's Eve Burning Bowl service, which is next week on Thursday at 11:15 p.m. Check out the Constant Contact for connection links for the New Year's Eve service and various other activities that we're having. You will get an explanation of how you can still do your letters to God and actually how you can release and dismiss those things that you no longer want to have as a part of your life. At the beginning of the year, we're having a vision board workshop. It's on Saturday, January 9th at 1 p.m. We have a new member class and orientation coming up as well on January 25th through January 28th. But all of these things are in your Constant Contact emails that we send out to you actually almost every day. It outlines the various services and activities that we offer. Now, I hope you've been following the wonderful series titled Conscious Healing. If not, it's still available for viewing on our YouTube channel. When the Rev first introduced the message, she talked about our physical healing, and last week it was our mental healing. And as she reminded us, and I had to laugh, we live for the most part inside of our head. She also indicated that healing can be messy and painful. However, she is coming to us today to provide some solutions on how to enhance our spiritual healing, that third eye. Now, she left us with a question, and she doesn't just do this willy-nilly, so I hope you were paying attention. But she asked us to reflect this past week on this question. Are you using your mind, or is your mind using you? So I invite you to take notes as Reverend Sylvia helps to steer us clear from the traps of the mind. Today we are having conscious healing, mental healing solutions. So thank you, Rev. Bring it to us.
All right. Thank you so much, Reverend Cheryl. And wonderful, wonderful to see you all and be with you all. Because I do see you. I see you in my heart. I see you in my spirit. I see you, and I thank you for being with us this morning. I absolutely love that song, Tia. It was so beautiful. Come, let us adore him. And it puts us in the Christmas spirit because, as Reverend Cheryl said, Christmas will be here in 5 days. And I know that we usually do an Advent series. While I'm not doing an Advent series, I have been holding in consciousness the themes of Advent. And so this is the last Sunday. And the two themes are joy and love. So we had hope and peace. Now we have joy and love to focus our hearts upon. And around this time, we always do our Adopt a Family. And the church is filled with toys and gifts for our children and for the families that we adopt. And also sometimes things for the parents as well. And there's much joy and there's much love expressed as we share our light with our community. And this year, because we are not here physically, we decided that we would purchase gift cards and give those to the family so that they could, on their own time and in their own safe ways, go and purchase gifts for their children. And this is a comment that I received because we've given them the gift cards already. And as I told you last week, we collected $15,000 worth of gift cards to give to our families. And I'm not sure how many families we blessed this season. Sometimes it's usually 10, 13, 15 families or something like that. But this is what we got from the woman who coordinates this along with us. And she says, she's addressing this to our administrative assistant who coordinates with her. She says, "Hi, Yvette. I know that I've thanked you already. However, after I delivered the cards to the moms, every mom," and she has it all in caps, "every mom called me back crying and in shock. Some even followed up with an email expressing their gratitude. What an impact Unity has made on these families who are struggling to keep it together. So I can't say thank you enough." And this from Ms. Sheila Wilcox, who does this with Every Home in D.C. That's the name of the organization. So I want to thank you all, too, for stepping up during this holy season, this holiday time. And it's a challenging time for many, but some are truly struggling, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, with even food security and safety. So for us to be able to bless families, that they might bless their children with toys and food for the holiday season, it just warms my heart. And I'm so grateful and thankful to each of you. We also are doing the same for our holiday cheer for our seniors, so that they too will be remembered and blessed during this holiday season. So again, I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. Well, it's coming fast approach. Even though Christmas is only 5 days away, that means that we are coming upon the end of this year. And of course, that means the beginning of a new year. And I know that most of us, or many of us, I'll say, but I think it's most of us, are probably hoping and praying and affirming for better days ahead, right? We're looking for better days ahead for a new year. We want somehow this new coming year to be vastly different and even better than the year we are in. Now, if you know this about life, you know this, that if you want to experience something new, that means you're going to have to either do something new, be something new, acquire something new, or think something new. The phrase that, the scripture I should say, that we used was, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." That if you want things to change, then you must renew your mind. So we've been working with our series on conscious healing, meaning that we must be conscious participators, co-creators in creating the life we want to live. We've got to be invested in it, right, to create this new life that we are desiring. So as we prepare to release the old, and we're preparing for this new year, but as we prepare to release the old, we want to make sure that we truly have healed our old ways of being and our old ways of thinking. Because if not, we're just going to produce more of the same, right? We'll just have more of the same. So healing our old ways of being, healing our old ways of thinking is paramount. We exist, I shared, on many levels, but we exist on a physical, a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual level. That those are all components and aspects of our being. We're physical beings, we're mental beings, we're emotional beings, we're spiritual beings, we're social beings, right? And so because we exist on these various planes, and they intermingle, it doesn't mean that we're here, here, and here, but we're all of that. The wholeness of who we are, we have these aspects that we might be expressing at any given time, and they intermingle. My spiritual nature inside might have an effect on my physical being. My thoughts, mental being, and aspects of my being might have an effect on my emotional state of being. So they intermingle, but we function on basically these four levels. And I've already, as Reverend said, I've already talked about the physical level. And last week, we moved into the mental aspect of our being. Our mental health, our sense of well-being, right? Our sense of wholeness in mind, body, heart, soul, and spirit. And so we looked at the ways in which the mind might trap us, the trappings of the mind, because we're mental beings. We do live inside of our head. We experience things inside the head, inside our awareness or consciousness. And so there are some traps of the mind that might block us or keep us from fully expressing at the apex of our divine potential, at the apex of any one of these categories, right? And so we wanted to take a look at some of the trappings of the mind. And I suggested that one of the big traps is this concept of fear. That we experience fear, and fear can certainly stop us in our tracks. And even though fear produces an emotional effect, it also originates with a mental thought, because our feelings, our emotions are secondary to our thoughts. But I wanted to cover this whole concept of fear when we get to emotional healing, because it's the effect that I think we can identify with, and we'll trace it back to what can we do with some of these feelings of fear, this experience of fear, when we get to emotional healing. So, in the meantime, we talked about, just to review quickly, the trappings of the mind, and one of them is the mind loves to engage in repetitive thoughts that it'll have us looping over and over, so that we begin to think the same things over and over and over again. Somebody said something, somebody did something. We keep replaying, reliving that experience, rehearsing it over in the mind, right? Again and again, and we get stuck in that loop. In addition to that, the mind engages in what we call incessant thinking, which is a little different than repetitive thoughts. Repetitive thoughts about the same thing. Incessant thinking is that the mind has the ability to produce thoughts, one thought after another. It doesn't have to be on the same topic. It just keeps thinking and thinking, analyzing, judging, comparing, assessing, right? Oh, I like that. I don't like that. Why'd they do that? What is that? And it's constantly thinking, moving thoughts about in the presence of the mind's activity. And it's this mental chatter that's So sometimes we might get distracted from being on purpose and being on point, because we're engaged in mindless, incessant thinking. And that traps us. And so because of that, we then might fall into the category where the mind has an inability to focus itself, because it's chattering here and here. And so if we let it, it's like a runaway train. It just keeps going and going. And so there's not an ability sometimes to focus the mind, to be one-pointed, to have the ability to concentrate, which is why some meditation techniques like Zen meditation is good. It's one-pointedness. It's helping the mind to come to a single point and to hold that. We like to say thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. But we're not really established in learning how to hold a thought consciously. See, not a repetitive thought, but holding the thought, so that we hold the vibration, we hold the energy of a particular thought for a particular purpose. That's when we are sort of master metaphysicians, right? So we talked about the mind's trapping of its inability to focus a thought, and we can combat that by beefing up our ability to concentrate on a thought, or Zen meditation, or watching a flower, or being with the flame of a candle, just being present to that. So we talked about that. We talked about this other big trapping of the mind, is that the mind has an aversion to uncertainty. It doesn't really like not knowing, because if it's going to keep thinking, goes here and here and here, the mind likes to, like a dog with a bone, likes to have a thought, chew on that thought, and, kind of work with it a little bit. And so uncertainty, that is going to call for our ability, perhaps, to calm the mind down by being willing to recognize that everything is in divine order, that everything is unfolding. Everything is really under the grace of the divine, and that we don't have to worry about if we don't know a particular direction, because as we know, sometimes life is revealed to us on a need-to-know basis. We don't get everything all at once. And maybe if we did, we might not want to step up to the plate. So we trust the process. So there's a part of learning to trust, helping the mind to begin to trust its sense of perhaps uncertainty. And then we talked about that the mind likes to think. It thinks in pictures, even for those people who say that they're not visual, but they think thoughts in pictures and they create an image, and that there's a powerful experience of using the imagination or using what we call seeing with the mind's eye. Seeing with the mind's eye to see a particular situation. Now, the challenge with this is the trapping that we get into might be we might not be seeing the whole picture, number one. We might be seeing something that is not necessarily truthful. We might seeing vain imaginings and just going off in a tangent. So we want to be able to not just rely upon the mind's eye, but there must be something deeper. Now, that's a lot of stuff that we covered that could get in the way of our mental state, our mental sense of wholeness and oneness, and there are many, many other things, and we might go into some of them next week, but we have to have the ability to, as I said, to mind the mind, right? To mind our minds, to be able to give focus and direction, to be able to tell when we're off, the mind is off on a tangent, right? And we have to have the ability to be able to quiet the mind down, to rein it in again. You know, I just had an experience with, I won't say who or what, but anyway, an individual who was just off on a tangent. They asked me to do something, I did what they did, but somehow or another in their mind, they had concocted a whole story of some kind of veiled attempt on my part, all this kind of stuff. And all I could do was watch their mind go from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other. And I thought, wow, you're seeing something that really isn't there. And seeing from a limited perspective. And so that helped me to understand. And when we do that, it can disturb our own sense of well-being, our own peace of mind. So I want to talk about how do we quiet the mind? What can we do to give the mind direction? Talk about some solutions and some techniques that we can use. And I'm only going to cover 2 today. We might cover more next week. I'll see how the Spirit flows. But I wanted to talk about 2 techniques, very powerful ones for minding our mind and bringing us into that state of well-being via the use of our own mind and consciousness. So I thought I was going to start with something that's become a very popular, it's a spiritual discipline, but it has now become very popular and it's become mainstream. I love when a spiritual discipline or a spiritual approach becomes mainstream. Because usually when we talk about spirituality, people think we're talking about woo-woo stuff or whatever. But the public, the main public has grabbed hold of this idea, and it's basically the practice of mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness. Now, before I get into talking about a little bit about what mindfulness is, I wanted to recommend 2 books to you that are in this category or along the similar lines of being mindful, being present to your thoughts of what's happening. And the first book is by a monk or a father or friar from the 16th century, and his name was Brother Lawrence. And he wrote a little book. Well, actually, he didn't write it. People wrote it from his letters and from his writings after he passed. And it's called Practicing the Presence. I love that. It's a small, little, quick read, but very powerful. He was just a simple monk in an abbey, and he didn't hold a high position. In fact, he used to wash the dishes, the pots and pans, and I always like to say back in the days, washing pots and pans in the 16th century was no easy feat. They didn't have Brillo and all these other things, right? So it was a task. But he became enlightened, and he became so divinely connected to God, to the divine, because he was present in everything that he did. He would connect his thought, that activity, to God. So that he was washing the dishes with God, for God, through God, God in him, as he was doing that activity. And he called it practicing the presence. He was living the presence of God in every activity that he did. And as a result, he became enlightened. he became connected, aware, self-realized, okay? By simply being present with whatever he was doing, bringing God into that experience, into his awareness, into his consciousness at every level and hand. So that's Brother Lawrence, Practicing the Presence, a real quick read. The other book that I highly recommend if we're going to be talking about the mind and how to work with it and some of the trappings of the mind, and we're all familiar with this gentleman, is Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. Now that's a powerful book because, again, it's along the similar lines of being what? In the now moment, practicing the now, being present to what is happening now and letting the mind be present because, as we talked about, the mind likes to go off on tangents. It likes to go here and there and have this kind of thought, that kind of thought, and we miss what is happening. There's power in the presence because God is in the present moment now, the now moment. And then he also talks literally about how the mind traps us and moves us into states of unconsciousness when we move away from the now moment. Because then we're in the past. Or now we're off into the future, and life, presence, power, creativity, all that we are seeking is here in the now moment. And then he also talks, I think he introduced this concept. He brings also being in the now moment has a physical being, and he talked about the pain body. You know, these thoughts, this energy that tries to take over our conscious awareness, and it moves us into an emotional state that we might not want to be in. So it's also good for emotional healing as well as mental practice and healing. So those two books are my recommendation. I think you will enjoy them tremendously, and they will help with garnering power to mind your mind, to take place, to make sure you're taking conscious awareness of what is happening in your mind. So let's get to this whole notion of mindfulness. What does mindfulness mean? The practice of mindfulness. And I'm excited because I just enrolled in a 2-year program of mindfulness. But anyway, mindfulness, and we thought that the sun was not going to come this morning, but here it is, and that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Here it is. So mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness. And this is what I want to say, that if you ever really want to know what's going on in your mind, or your thoughts, begin to spend some time with your mind. Spend some time with your thoughts to be able to see, well, just what is it that I'm thinking? Because you know, believe it or not, you can be thinking thoughts and you're not even aware that you're thinking thoughts. It's an automatic activity. And so therefore you are unconscious and unaware of the quality of the thoughts, the nature of the thoughts, the energy of the thoughts. You're just engaged in the process and you miss it. So spend time with your mind. Sit for a while and see if you can be present to your thoughts. This is what mindfulness is about. Being present to the thoughts that are in your mind, that you are experiencing, right? Now, when you are practicing mindfulness of being present, sitting with your being, sitting with your consciousness, sitting with your feelings, sitting with your perceptions, sitting with everything, your judgments, your whatever's going on, being present right there is a powerful thing. But don't get caught in trying to fix the thoughts or stop the thoughts or alter the thoughts or change them or feel guilty or bad. I shouldn't have these thoughts. Oh, my gosh. Forget all of that. Just watch them. Just observe your own mind. Observe your thinking. Observe the thoughts that are flowing through your mind, because this observation of just seeing them, just noticing them, just observing them, this simple technique of being mindful, full of presence to what's happening inside, will bring an awareness that you have never known before. It'll bring great insights because you'll get to see, wow, I didn't realize that this thought is, a prevalent thought, or that I have this kind of feeling or this kind of perception. You'll get to see what you're holding in consciousness, either knowingly or unknowingly, because we're holding something whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious or whether we're not conscious of it. But as you begin to sit and you're bringing light, when you're mindful, you're aware You're just bringing awareness. And awareness is light. When you begin to bring light to your mind, you become aware of just what it is that you are consciously holding. And what that helps you to do is it helps you to gain a foothold over your unconscious thoughts, your unconscious presence. Because, you know, it's the unconscious that usually has us moving in a reactionary way. We're not even thinking, we're reacting. Somebody says something, I'm not really thinking about it, boom, that reaction comes out, and I've responded before I've even had a chance to think about it. And sometimes woe unto me and woe unto them who I'm just responding to, you know, and I'm not choosing my actions. And so when you begin to bring light, you begin to see all of a sudden awareness helps you with your unconscious. You gain a stronger foothold, and you're not subject to so much unconscious behavior, unconscious feelings, reactions, thoughts, all of that. So bringing light, mindfulness, bringing awareness to your mind helps you to be more present. And believe it or not, you'll begin to, when you can begin to see your thoughts, mindfulness is just about seeing your thoughts. When you begin to see your thoughts, your seeing them will help them to begin to transform on their own. See, sometimes you think, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't think that. Oh, why? But you did. And you do. And then we go to try to think, don't think that. Don't think that. Don't feel that. Don't feel that. But guess what? You feel it and you're thinking it. So trying to change it sometimes is a challenge. And we're going to talk a little later on maybe about the techniques of affirmative prayer as a conditioning tool for the mind. But this being present to your thoughts, this bringing awareness, what it does is as you begin over and over to see your thoughts, oh, wow, this is what I do. I feel this over and over. Oh, wow, I've had that thought 100 times. That awareness is what begins to help have the thoughts change themselves with more grace, more ease, without you doing so much, I got to change it, I got to change it, I got to change it. When you see it, when you see it, when you see it, all of a sudden, through grace, it begins to change, because it's like you're flipping on a light, you know. It's like things begin to look differently when you turn on the light, right? When you walk into a dark room and your eyes are trying to adjust, you see things, but you see them in a shadow, you don't see them clearly. But when you flip that light on, all of a sudden, things look different. The perspective is different. It's the same thing. When we don't have the awareness, when we don't have light in our consciousness, things look different. They look gray. They're not as clear. They're not as sharp. We come to some conclusions. We think, oh, my God, this is that, when it's not really that. But we think so. So when you bring awareness into your consciousness and you become, things look different, and all of a sudden things begin to unfold and shift and change, and you're more present. You see things from a clearer perspective than when you did just being in the dark, or letting the mind run without awareness. So as a practice, you want to sit with your mind for a while. And this is a meditation technique when you're practicing mindfulness. And it's not a practice of silencing the mind. There are times when we want to have that type of meditation where we move into the silence, as we say in New Thought and Unity. But this particular mindfulness as a spiritual practice is not about silencing the mind, but it's about watching it. Watching it. Jesus would often say to his disciples, you know, especially when he had gone off into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray, and he asked them, watch and pray with me. And when he came back, they were doing what? They were asleep, fast asleep. And he did it 3 times, and he said, can't you watch with me for an hour? Meaning, stay awake, pay attention, be present, watch and pray, because transformation happens just simply through the watching. If we could watch that Christ mind, watch the Christ thoughts and presence, things begin to unfold powerfully for us in our lives. So practice this practice of mindfulness. Sit with your thoughts, not with an agenda, just be. Breathe deeply and watch what comes in and out. Don't try to engage it. Don't try to change it. Just observe it as a spiritual practice, it will transform your life. And the other second technique that I wanted to share with you this morning that I think is a powerful one that will help to bring guidance and direction and clarity to your life is a bit more mystical. This practice carries a little bit of a mystical element to it. Remember last week I said that sometimes we are thrown off course because we have a tendency to rely upon or see life through or think through the mind's eye. You know, we have our physical eye in which we see and we judge and we're looking, but Jesus said, judge not by appearances, because we can even be thrown off with the physical eye. Sometimes even physically we don't see what we think we see. We can even miss things physically with your eyes if you're not attuned to it. And then we might then rely upon the mind's eye. But the mind's eye might contain some error too, because the mind's eye is really relying upon the intellectual perspective that we might have. My mind's eye is relying upon my assessments and my judgments and my intellectual power so I can see things and make connections. And there's nothing wrong with the intellect, but the intellect is a tool of the mind. It is a tool that you use, but sometimes we rely upon the mind's eye, our ability to see and think with our mind, and we get caught up in thinking, I know how this works. I know what's going on here. And have you ever been around people who are intellectually very smart and they think they know it all, but they've missed the boat completely? Or people where you could say they could have book smart but no common sense. They can't see what's right in front of them, but yet they can, dissect a theory or a paradigm or whatever. The mind's eye, but there's something beyond the mind's eye, because we can also get caught up in the mind's eye of our own perceptions, our own thinking, our own understanding, our intellectual understanding, you see. And sometimes, a lot of times, most times, life is beyond intellectual understanding, because what we're talking about is you need sometimes spiritual illumination. You need spiritual wisdom. The intellect is fine, but we need to sometimes move beyond that. We need to be able to have knowledge and wisdom that comes direct from spirit. And so I'm talking about developing and opening the third eye, the eye of spirit. Seeing with the eyes of spirit, seeing from a completely different realm. There is the manifest realm, the realm of the world, the physical realm, but there is the spiritual realm of things not seen. Faith is what? The evidence of things that hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. There is this unseen world that is more real than this physical world. And because we can't see it, and because we've been addicted to empirical data, empirical science, we've been taught to think, if you can't see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, it doesn't exist. Well, that used to be the old paradigm. And thank God there's a new paradigm, because the quantum physics and quantum metaphysics is telling us there's a whole new way of being. And there's a consciousness that can't be touched, but it can be experienced. It can be felt. So this inner world, this inner realm is extremely important. And will contain less error when it comes direct from spirit. So I'm talking about if we want to really sharpen our mind's ability to receive a higher wisdom, right? A higher consciousness, to be able to see beyond the veil, beyond the things that have appeared, and to move into seeing from a different perspective, a spiritual perspective, then we might want to develop or begin to open what's called our third eye. And our third eye, of course, is that eye that sees beyond the literal, but it leads to more awareness, spiritual. It's spiritual in nature, and it leads to awareness. So it's part of, I consider, it can help us develop our mental abilities as we begin to see. So what is this third eye? Okay, so I've got two definitions here. Daily life describes the third eye as this: The third eye is located in your pineal gland. The pineal gland. And I'll talk about that in a minute. He says, where ancient philosophers believed was the seat of the soul. The pineal gland, the seat of the soul. The pineal gland is actually a gland that is in the middle of your brain, your head, your brain, right? And the ancients, and it's there, the ancients believed, and science says that, and there's much to be discovered scientifically about the functions of the pineal gland. But one of them they've discovered is that it has to do with light and darkness. It's our ability, it helps with our ability to differentiate between light and dark, which is very spiritually powerful, okay? The pineal gland is said to be filled with light. And some folks say it's actually a center of light, literal light within the middle of your brain. It's a center of light. It also has been attributed to helping to produce melatonin for the body. And that helps us to be able to stay, it helps us to know when to be awake and when to go to sleep. And think about that. If your pineal gland is off, you might be sleeping too much, closed down, shut down, you're not awake. The pineal, while it has some physical attributes, it also has spiritual attributes. It is that thing that helps you to awaken, to stay awake when you need to be spiritually awake. It's that thing that helps you to see light, to be light, to have light, to distinguish light from the darkness. Very powerful literally, physically, and very powerful spiritually for us. So this third eye, then, is said to be the pineal gland, or that place of light. And it says, the other description says, it's the third eye that allows us to intuit possible futures and make sense of our own potential. And so it enables us to see, because we're seeing beyond the literal, seeing beyond the physical. And it says that it evolved to help us identify underlying patterns in our lives. So we can begin to see and to know and to understand at a deeper level through this third eye, through this pineal gland. And this is what Wikipedia says about the third eye. It says the third eye refers to the gate that leads to the inner realms of space and spaces of higher consciousness. Let me read that again. The third eye refers to the gate, so it's a portal, right? An opening. It refers to the gate that leads to the inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness. Now, this is so important, all right? Higher consciousness. And then it says, Wikipedia says, in spirituality, the third eye often symbolizes a state of enlightenment or the evocation of mental images having deeply personal, spiritual, or psychological significance. So it's the gateway to, your third eye is the gateway to a higher consciousness. Now, I was laughing because we sing every Sunday when we're here, our thoughts are prayers, right? And that we're seeking what? A higher consciousness. And I think everybody's talking about a higher consciousness, but have you actually experienced it? Or do we just talk, is a higher consciousness just a concept? Have you experienced higher realms of consciousness? Beyond the literal, beyond the manifest realm, beyond even your own intellectual understanding and thoughts? Have you moved into the spaces and the realms, the inner realms that have worlds upon worlds and experiences, right? And people, the moment we start going there, people say, oh, that's woo-woo, that's I don't know why we are afraid of that, but when you begin to open your third eye, you begin to open yourself, your consciousness, to higher realms. And this is very powerful because when you do that, what you begin to see will change. Your thoughts, when you open and enter the portal or open the portal of your third eye, your thoughts are going to begin to change. They will move from a lower vibration to a higher vibration, from lower thoughts to higher thoughts. You'll start to think differently, or the quality of your thoughts will be different. Whereas before you might have thoughts of a lower vibration, of tit for tat, and blah, 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 but all of a sudden you're moved into forgiveness, to allowing, to, you're operating at a different level. So your thoughts will begin to change, and they will also carry a higher vibration, which means that you can speak your word and hold the thought, and you're grabbing hold of that spiritual vibration, which means when you begin to pray or you begin to speak your word, it carries a different vibration because you've moved into that realm unseen. You're touching the spirit as you begin to open your third eye. Your perceptions will change. You won't see things like you used to see things. Things won't be black and white. There'll be this wonderful ability to hold maybe even paradoxes, and holding different paradigms, and not being so yes and no and black and white, but life is, there are levels. In my Father's house are many mansions, many levels of consciousness. And so when you begin to open your third eye, you begin to perceive divinely higher consciousness, higher realms. And all of a sudden, you have what I would call, you begin to have what maybe a bird's eye view of life, as opposed to when we are struggling with a more limited view. When we're in this worldly view, the mind's eye, or your literal eye, we begin to struggle because the mind's eye is limited. We see what we see. But when you begin to have a spiritual perspective, a bird's eye view, you see what? More, right? A bird sees more than what we're seeing right here. This is a limited perspective. We can see here, we can see here. I might even be able to see up into the sky. But a bird's eye view sees the expansiveness. And this is important because when we are able to open the consciousness and expand our consciousness, what happens is, friends, we begin to have greater choice because you see from a higher vantage point. You see more. When your mind and your eye is narrow, you have limited choices and you make limited choices, right? And so you're more contained within the limitations of the world. This is why Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. So when you begin to open up the spiritual eye, you see things differently. You have better choices, higher choices, more choices, choices that you didn't even think you had. Your perspective, you don't have to struggle as much with the limitation of being limited. So the mind's eye and the spiritual eye, or the third eye, is very important for us because it will enable us to see life from a higher vantage point. We have more choices, more perceptions, and the perceptions will be greater. It's like, I don't know why this image of when I don't know if it was Columbus or whatever, but who went out to discover the world, and they would say the world is flat, and they went into a boat and they could only see what appeared upon the horizon, so it looked like a cliff. That's a limited point of view. It's a limited experience, and it caused them to be limited for many, many, many years until someone had the brave courage to say, let's venture out into what seems to be the limit, and they kept going and going and going, and with that horizon, you never reach the end of the horizon. It's unfolding, right? So you don't fall off the cliff. You just keep expanding to greater experiences. And so all of a sudden, they had more discoveries when the land was not flat. You don't just go out there, and it's not as far as I can see, but it's beyond what I could see. There's still life out there. So with this opening of your third eye, it not only gives you greater choices, but it brings you into what I consider, it activates your intuition. Now, there's a lot said about intuition, and a lot of times when I read about intuition, people say, oh, it's the gut feeling. Oh, it's your hunch. Oh, I'm going to be clear right now. Intuition has nothing to do with a gut feeling. It's not about a hunch. It's not about guessing. It's not even about feeling. It is about knowing. Your intuition is your direct sense of knowing. It comes into your awareness and your consciousness, which again, the pineal gland, the third eye, sharpens, opens your ability to intuit, to bring that knowing, the inner knowing, to your conscious awareness. So that all of a sudden you know that you know. It's a direct revelation. It's a divine knowing. It's not a guessing. And so when we begin to move and work on this third eye of bringing more light into our being, all of a sudden our intuition is sharpened. And I call it, your intuition is what I call your divine GPS system. Right? Because the GPS, you're trying to figure out it's trying to tell you where to go. But with our GPS it's our GPS, our God perceiving system. From God, we perceive and know the truth. So we want to be able to stimulate that. And when you start moving inward and you start conditioning your mind to move beyond the mind, the limits of the rational mind, the reasoning mind, the carnal mind, and you begin to see with the spiritual mind, the spiritual consciousness, the spiritual awareness, your life begins to change. And when we begin to develop this aspect that we cut through, when you open that third eye, when you open the inner wisdom, it cuts through all of the illusions. It cuts through all of the chatter. It cuts through all of the mental angst. It cuts through all of that, and we go directly into the presence and power of God, knowing divine guidance and beginning to act upon that. And so there's more peace that comes. If you're struggling, what should I do? And I go through this because, I'm a Libra, so sometimes I thought, this looks good, but so does this, and I'm here, it drives me crazy. Meditate, I get into that place where, you know what? I've accessed, I know, I'm clear. I had that thought when I was working with this whole concept of the vaccination. At first, I was using my mind, and I was saying, I ain't getting that vaccination because it came too fast and blah, 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 and I was all off on it, right? Who knows what they're doing, and it's too much, and blah, 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 blah. Mind chatter. I was meditating, I was in a different state, and it was just as clear, you get that vaccination when it comes out. It's in divine order, you are divinely protected. And I was like, okay. That thought cut through all of my chatter and angst about, because the science and the this, Spirit said, bam. And once I got that, I told my mother, I'm getting the vaccination because I've been guided to do so, and apparently it's fine for me. It will be fine. But what it did was it was an example. I was off on the mind game I was playing with the question and the science and what they did in the past, and what Spirit was like, right here. And I was like, okay. And there was peace about it. I'm totally at peace with it and very clear. When my turn is up, I will be raising my hand and I will be going because I've been guided to do that. And so once I'm guided from on high, I don't have to guess. I don't have to question. It just makes for a more peaceful inner experience. And that's what we want. That's a mental sense of wholeness and well-being when we can connect our consciousness to the divine. And we become conscious, intuitive beings. So, as a practice then, to begin to help with this concept of opening your third eye, and it's a simple practice, and there are many disciplines and many ways and many approaches. I'm going to give you a simple one. It's one that I use. I've been given it when I used to go to India, and this is what Spirit also gave me. Just sit. Spend some time every day sitting, right? But you want to be able to image light emanating from your pineal gland, the center of your head, your consciousness, and it goes directly. The third eye, people say this is your third eye in between the brows. That's where you can access, but it actually is meeting here and meeting here. The place where this line and this line intersects in your brain is that seat of the soul. And soul for us in New Thought and Unity is the sum total of your consciousness, the seat of the soul, that divine place of God as awareness, as light. And begin then, once you're in there, just spend time imaging light. Light in the center of your brain. And if you want to, you can image it maybe even as a small flame that is radiating light. So the light then in the center of your brain just radiates and covers your frontal cortex and all over the brain. Your head is filled with light. Just fill your head with some light, okay? I'll do that, and I also go to the heart. But right now, before we can do that when we get to emotional healing, but right now, fill your brain. And you can do it for 5 minutes. Just see and hold the image of light. White light, golden light, bright light, the light of a flame, but just be in the presence of light within your own being. And that image, that feeling and thought and awareness as light begins to activate your third eye. You will find, and let me just say this, it's a process. The opening of your third eye is a process, which is why I'm always saying to you, meditate, right? Prayer, all those things are disciplines that over time you establish a consciousness that begins to affect your being. You don't change all of a night and say, oh, I'm enlightened. It's a process. Okay, you could have an experience that brings on enlightenment, but the presence and maintaining this enlightened awareness, for the most of us, it's a process. Okay? So spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, because there are other meditations you might want to do, and there are other things you can do to work with your consciousness and your mind, but at least begin to bring light into your awareness, because it'll shift and change everything about you, and it'll bring you to a better place of wholeness and peace and conscious awareness. So mindfulness, watching your thoughts, being present to them, being present to whatever is, not trying to change, just see as a practice. And then any other practice is as a spiritual, bringing light into your awareness, into your consciousness, into your mind, into your brain, your third eye, and just dwelling in this light, dwelling in this light. Those two things will have such an impact to shift and change your vibration. And I'm sharing these because, as I said, we're in a different time. This is a time for us to really step up our game. This is a time not to, we're going to do some of the basics maybe next week, prayer, affirmation, all that. But I want you to work with these two because this is big girl stuff, big boy stuff. This is stuff that is going to cause a radical shift in your being. And these times are calling for us to be radically healed and radically transformed, because that's what's happening on the planet now. So we want to amplify our ability to keep up, to consciously participate in the healing of our own mind, bodies, hearts, souls, spirit, experiences, relationships, connections, so that we can really move about. When I encountered this individual who just unloaded all their stuff, I was able to just kind of like this and write, I bring nothing but love. I could just stay centered. Normally, I'd be right back at it. I just was like, oh, well, here, I can offer you love. And when I finally just said, I have no harm, I have no judgments, I'm not judging you, then there was no response. That ended, we were texting, they ended the text, and I could feel I said, just breathe. I'm only offering love. And I refused to go into the back and forth. And that was good for me because it was a natural response. It just came, just be love, just send light. And that was coming from me because I was able to be established in love and in light. And therefore, my situation changed. I don't know whether it truly changed. I think it changed them because they didn't come back again the third time. They just silence, crickets. Because what can you say when I'm only giving you love? What else could you say about that except receive it? So I invite you to join us next week as we continue with conscious healing. I'm not sure if we're going to go through more techniques and more solutions, or will we do emotional healing, but let's see what Spirit brings. In the meantime, be present to your life. It's the best thing that you have going. I love you. I bless you. I appreciate you. And I behold the divine Spirit in you. Namaste and blessings. And, well, thank you, beloved ones. Let's have a quick meditation before we do musical inspiration. Normally I had reversed it, but I got a request to do the meditation. So we're just going to do that briefly, and then we will hear from wonderful Tia once again. So I'm just going to invite you to begin always with deep breathing, because breathing deeply helps to center the body. It helps to still the mind, and it helps to open the heart. So I invite you to take a few deep breaths. Slow, savor the breath. Just take it in slowly. And feel it. Allow it to move through your being. Knowing that with each breath you take, there's the consciousness of peace that is carried along the breath. As you breathe deeply, aware of this gift of life, bringing your presence to the breath. There's the fullness of the divine within that activity. No need to rush or hurry. But to be mindful of that which is an automatic response for the body. Breathing takes place while we're unconscious of its activity. But when we bring conscious awareness to the breath, we are stimulating a sense of oneness, connection, wholeness. We become aware of the presence of God active in this very body, active in our very lives. I love the scripture that is coming to my mind that says, God is my very present help in times of trouble, in times of need. God is my very present help in times of need, in times of trouble. Just not even a breath away, the presence of God is. The answers, the solutions, the fulfillment of your every need is in this moment. God is. I am. Become aware. God is. I am. Oh, thank you for this divine pause in the creative flow of life. I become still. Be still and know that I am God. I'm just present to the presence. So allow yourself to feel gratitude now. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for the good that knows no bounds. Thank you, God, for our infinite blessings. Just take a deep breath again. And so it is. Amen and amen. And now with an open heart, an open mind, and open ears, let us listen and welcome once again Miss Tia Wortham.
Mary had a baby, oh my Lord. Mary had a baby, where was he born? Born in a manger low. Where was he born? He was born in a manger low. Mary had a baby. Oh, yes. Oh, my Lord. What did they call him? Some call him one thing. What did they call him? But I'll call him another. What did they call him? Some say Emmanuel. Mary had a baby. I'll call him sweet little Jesus boy. I'll call him Jesus. He's called King Jesus, Jesus, wonderful Counselor, everlasting Father. He's the Prince of Peace. Mary had a baby. Oh, yes. Oh, my Lord. What did they call him? Some call him one thing. What did they call him? But I'll call him another. What did they call him? Some say Emmanuel. Mary had a baby. I'll call him sweet little Jesus boy. Jesus, Jesus, wonderful Counselor,
Wow. What a wonderful, wonderful song. Thank you, Tia. And you look so beautiful today, so festive and holiday-ish. Wonderful. Mary, we love to hear Tia singing Mary Had a Baby. Wonderful ones, let's go into this season of Christmas feeling wonderfully blessed. Regardless of what is taking place in the outer, we know that everything is in divine order and unfolding, and we're trusting in that process. We're going deep within for our guidance and our direction, and then moving out into the world, shining our light, being who we are, light bearers, divine offspring of the One. So thank you for your presence. We want to take a moment to bless our offering, but before we do, let's affirm and hold the conscious awareness of this affirmation that we've been using thus far for the series. And the affirmation is thus. It says, I am at one with the healing presence of God. I am whole in spirit, mind, and body. I am a conscious healer. Praise God. And so it is. Amen and amen. And we take a moment to bless our offering, knowing that we cannot outgive God's giving. This is a season where people give gifts, but the gift that we have been given is the gift of the presence of the Christ in us. So as we bless our offering, hold that consciousness of love and light, of fulfillment, of hope, peace, joy in your hearts. Affirm divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. This is that powerful prayer, and we have been blessed and will continue to be blessed. So once again, I thank you, and I invite you to join us for our Christmas Eve candlelighting service. Hope to see you then. Blessings and namaste. Let's take it home, Richard, and our wonderful trio.
airfare